Welcome to the Scott My Show, a podcast where we talk about bodybuilding, health improvement, and physique enhancement. Before we get into the show, I just wanted to let you know that I do offer one-on-one coaching. If you're interested in working with me, I offer personalized coaching where I can help you reach your goals, whether it be fat loss, building muscle, improving your health, or all the above. I provide tailored nutrition, training, and supplementation advice, one or all of those together, with 24/7 ongoing support to help you every step of the way with any questions you may have. If you're interested, you can DM me on Instagram, click the link in my profile to fill out a form, or ask any questions you may have. Also, we can hop on a free consult call where we can go over your goals, answer questions, and discuss what it would look like to work together. The show is brought to you by Element Electrolytes, and for a limited time, the Element Chocolate Medley is available with 3 flavors: chocolate mint, chocolate chai, and chocolate raspberry. They all go really well in any hot beverage, whether it's coffee, tea, or just a glass of hot water. And I personally love Element Electrolytes, and my wife does too. We've been using them for years. They're a great way to help boost performance, to help you get in the proper amount of electrolytes for a day, and help regulate brain health, physical health. Uh, Salt is important for a lot of things, and just drinking plain water doesn't get you the electrolytes you need. So check out Element in the description, or you can go to drinkelement.com/Scott Mize, and there you'll be able to get a free sample pack when you use my link and help support the show. Thank you. This is a quick disclaimer before we start the show. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said here should be taken as medical advice, and please consult with your physician before making any changes to your diet, exercise regime, or medications. Thank you, and on to the show. Martin Silva at Martin Silva Fitness hosts Optimize Your Body, a podcast about all things lifestyle, nutrition, and mindset, with past guests like Marc Lobliner and Stan Efferding. Martin has dedicated his life to helping ambitious people become the best version of themselves with over 15 years as a coach. Welcome to the show, Martin.
Thanks for having me on again, man. I was just
Yeah.
thinking off then. It's been like 2 years, man. It was 2 years ago we last
Yeah.
had a chat
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah, back in the carnivore days.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Carnival
I,
past
I'm
days, wasn't it?
sure
Yeah, that's
I'm sure a lot of the listenership has switched over. So would love to start with kind of your background, how you got into fitness and eventually competing, and what were some of the motivations there. But take your time. We can do the
awesome.
long version.
Yeah, man. I'm going over the timeline in my head. I'm like, how long have you got? But started lifting weights firstly at a young age. So I was like 16 when I started lifting weights.
Okay.
Always active as a kid and always very competitive, much like yourself, right? I know the bodybuilding stuff you've done. So for me, I always played rugby. So I'm from Wales in the UK and I live in Sydney, Australia, in case the listeners are wondering where the hell's that accent from. It's a little bit weird. But yeah, I moved over to Sydney, Australia 8 years ago. And in Wales, rugby is like our number one sport. So always playing competitive sports, rugby, football, mainly rugby. And then I started lifting weights at the age of like 16. Well, actually 14 was when I first started lifting. But then from 16, 17, I've been consistent ever since. So it's been like 20 years. And I just fell in love with it. But you know what it's like at the age of 16, right? I started lifting at the right age when it's literally natural steroids at that age, right? It's the sweet spot. Obviously, genetics play a part as well. And I just noticed I was always a skinny kid. So I noticed straight away, oh, I'm building muscle here. By the age of 17, 18, like I was that guy out of your mates who was in shape. You know what I mean? All I did was bench press mainly and biceps, but I was the guy with the chest and I was happy with that, to be honest. I was happy getting the attention and stuff like that. But I also noticed that it started carrying over into my performance on the rugby field and stuff. And
Mm.
then fast forward to about 1920, I actually got my qualification as a personal trainer and then never looked back then, really. I've been coaching people ever since, 37 years old now. And yeah, that's what kind of got me into it, really. I just fell in love with it straight away. And then obviously, when I started personal training people, that's when it really became my passion. And I thought, oh, wow, really enjoy this, really enjoy, training people, seeing them improve their body, seeing them, just improve their whole life, really. So
Yeah.
yeah, never look back, really, man. But yeah, we can fast forward then to when I got into bodybuilding. I think I was 26 when I did my first show.
Cool. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
jealous. I wish I had started lifting when I was 16. I didn't pick up a weight until I was like 24, 25.
I remember you saying last
Yeah,
time, man. You got
I was,
50 nights as well. That would have been too much. That would
yeah,
have been too much for the world, man, if you started lifting at 16.
yeah, no, I was a competitive lightweight rower for 8 years. And coaches back then, like lifting would make you muscle bound and all these silly myths. So yeah, I actually didn't get into lifting until around 2019, which is kind of crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
2019, yeah, but rowing is more cardio based, of course. It's actually hard
Yeah.
to keep size on, especially at that age, but
Oh yeah.
it still requires strength and power. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that would have helped in your later years with like
Oh yeah,
muscle
I'm
as
sure it would have helped with injury prevention as well. I think
well.
if I could go back, I would have done it much differently.
Mm.
But yeah, sorry to interrupt. So how'd you get into your first show? What motivated you to do that?
Yeah, so basically, when I was 26, the men's physique, I'm sure a lot of the audience would be aware of men's physique,
Yep.
first started becoming popular, when you wear the board shorts and stuff. And I was just, I was in great shape at that point. Obviously, I've been lifting for almost a decade. And people were just saying to me in the gym, I was PTing it, Mark, you should give this a go, man. You're already in shape. Why not do it? It was the first
Yeah.
local one. So I just jumped on stage on a whim, really, not really
Wow.
knowing what I was doing. All I did was just like eat more egg whites. You know what I mean? Tried to take a leaf out of Rocky Balboa's book, just eating more eggs. Basically, I didn't know what I was doing, and I jumped on stage and I think I came second out of like nine guys,
Wow.
and I qualified them for the British finals. So it was just like, wow, wasn't expecting that. And then that's when it all started. Then, so we can talk about the kind of the positives and the negatives because
And
there
you
is
were
a
in
dark
Wales at the time
in
when
Wales at the time. That's right.
you didn't move to Sydney in Australia until much later.
That's right. Yeah. So this would have been back in like 2013 or something like
Okay.
that. My first. Yeah, yeah. And then, as I say, just obviously got second place without actually expecting anything from it, and then qualified for the British finals, which
Amazing.
was 5 weeks later. So then I just got more shredded than I've ever been for that, but didn't really know what I was doing. So I got like an old school bodybuilder to do my diet plan and stuff for the British
Yeah.
finals. And if I'm honest, and this is IFBB. So as you know, like in IFBB in America, right? Is
Yeah.
it's the same thing you did,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Is it?
IFBB. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, to get to that top level, that's when I said we can talk about this. I've never taken steroids, got nothing against people who take steroids. It takes hard work either way, whether you're competing or getting in shape.
Yeah.
But I never took steroids. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tempted, right?
Yeah.
But that's when I realized I got to the British finals and I looked around and I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it at this level.
There's a missing
Okay, I see.
ingredient here.
Exactly, mate. And obviously, I didn't get anywhere, didn't place anywhere. But that's when it all started for me then. So, but yeah, that's when I also developed a really poor relationship with food, which we can get into. I think it's
Mm.
really important. I'm sure you've already brought this to your audience, people's attention, but there's a dark side to it when it
Mm.
comes to relationship with food. It's never a healthy thing to do, right? Physiologically, getting on stage, I think it's amazing. I think it can change your life in terms of character building and what you can learn
Yeah.
from it, but it can also be, really detrimental. I've seen so many people that I used to compete with end up, in a bad way with major body image issues, eating disorders and stuff like
Mm.
that. But then there's a handful of people, like, for example, the first show I did, Romain Lansford, your audience would have probably heard of him. He's a massive name now. He got to the highest level doing like men's physique. And I think he ended up doing classic and stuff in the end as well. But he's the
Mm.
one to come first in the first show. He did really well out of it, use it to his benefit, but not everyone does that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. First, I want to compliment you. You have phenomenal physique. I think there are a lot of people who are enhanced who end up not looking as good as, top natural athletes like yourself. It's really
Thanks, man.
I can tell you that you've dedicated your life to it, obviously. But yeah, I think it's actually really sad on the other hand when you go and see what is clearly an enhanced competition, or even people at the gym who have been taking steroids for a long time and haven't learned those fundamental skills and dedicated themselves. And it's like, it's kind of wasted. It's like, why are you taking these substances when, you could clearly get so much better naturally? It's sad, but yeah, props to you for staying natural. That's phenomenal. And yeah, I'd love to hear what your nutrition, at least knowledge and approach was before competing too. Like, had you had any education around it? I know you said going into the show you didn't really know what you were doing, but did you have a good relationship with food generally?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I used to eat absolute guy. If I'm honest, I just used to, when I look back at when I was 16 and how much muscle I built through those years, I was just in a calorie surplus. You know what I mean? I was eating pasta. I saw that Arnie said, mayo is good. So what I would do is I would make pasta when I was 16, 17, 18 and just slam in loads of mayo, tins
Oh,
of tuna. You know what I mean? I would just eat that all the time. I just ate loads, and that's why I gained muscle, right? But I did have wasn't obviously didn't have abs till I was about 22, 23. But then, fast forward to the early 20s when I was in like insane shape at that point. Obviously, that's kind of the sweet spot as well, right? You've had, 5, 6 years of lifting whilst your testosterone levels are still through the roof naturally.
yeah.
But I was eating garbage. I was eating absolute garbage, eating everything in sight, really. Didn't really have much knowledge on anything. I was hitting a protein target without realizing it just because I liked eating meat. But then, fast forward to this is a great question because just before I competed in 2013, I'd actually got to a point where I was eating better quality foods. I wasn't really educated at this point, really. I
Mm,
just knew we kind of know, don't we? It's not rocket science, right?
yeah.
Single ingredient foods, if you
Yeah.
can eat mainly that, it's pretty straightforward. And that's what I was doing. I was eating mainly whole foods and I was feeling better. And then I started competing. So it was jumping on stage on a whim. Okay, wow, got to the British finals. Then that 5 weeks between there and the British finals is when things turned south, then turned up shredded. Obviously, didn't place, started binge eating afterwards like I never had before. I think I put away like, I'm not glorifying this, but I think I put away about 20,000 calories literally within about 24 hours. I
Wow.
literally just went absolutely all out afterwards
Yeah.
and felt like absolute dog shit literally for a week. So I think I had like 2 days like that actually. I remember it took me a week to overcome how I felt afterwards. And it
Yeah.
was the down of, not placing and all that kind of stuff as well,
Yeah.
and the hormones, everything else. So that's when I started then developing a really poor relationship with food was after that comp. And I really battled, if I'm honest, for a good 2 years then. So after that British finals, I then did another 3 men's physique comps with IFBB. And, I would be super disciplined, leading up to comps. And like literally, it was unnecessary when I look back, eating basically, the typical bodybuilder diet, basically chicken breast, broccoli, sweet potato, the same foods all the time, leading up to comp. I remember for one of those comps, I was eating 7 meals a day,
Wow.
right? And I was literally eating turkey, asparagus, broccoli, macadamia oil, and sweet potato for literally like 6 to 8 weeks and nothing else.
Wow.
Obviously, no shit, you're going to get a bit of issues with food after that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was kind of the story. Yeah. So it was 2 years in, even when I wasn't competing, I was binge eating on the weekends, man, and developed a terrible relationship with food, man. It took me a while to bounce back from that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it affects a lot more people than obviously we know. Obviously, it's becoming more accepted to talk about it, and there's a lot of healthy spaces for people to talk about it. And people like yourself, I commend for being open about it. But I think there's a huge population of people who never even talk about it openly, and it affects them. And definitely in the fitness industry, it's very prevalent.
100%, man. I want to touch on something I was talking to someone about yesterday, actually, on a podcast, is the body image issues. This individual I was talking to, he actually had anorexia when he was in his late teens, right? Treacherous, overcome it, and he's thriving now. But I was then talking about body image, and it's like men don't really talk about that very
Yeah.
often. And I want to delve deep into your story on my podcast, but it's like I used to. This is an interesting thing. So the binge eating, I'll get deep into that, but just real quick on the body image, right? When you're getting on stage, right, and you're being critiqued against some of the best physiques, in your case and in my case, I got to the world level with WBFF,
Yeah.
beating the worlds against some of the best physiques, and pretty much on the planet, pretty much. And then you're getting told, you've got certain lagging body parts, right? So I was always a bit insecure about my legs anyway, because my legs were lagging. Hence why I was doing men's physique. And then I went over to WBFF and I went into the little speedos. I thought, right, I got to ramp up this leg stuff. But I already had a bit of an insecurity there. And then it was like cemented in. Okay, I did my first, if we fast forward after IFBB in 2015, I did my first WBFF show, fitness model. And I came second out of like 40, just missed out on the pro card. And then I did it again 6 months later, got the pro card. But that was just my legs that let me down. And they were like, man, your legs are, and Sean Stafford, I like him. He's down the line, but he was like, bro, your legs are terrible, man. Like that let you like down the line. So I already had that. And then it was like shoulders as well. So what you find then is you're like, when you didn't have body image issues before, then you find yourself looking because you compare, it's a comparison thing, right? You're
Mhm.
comparing yourself against the 1%ers. And
Yeah.
then you look in the mirror and you go, man, my shoulders are shit, my legs are shit. And then I got into this place then with the binge eating, overeating on the weekends. Then I would, because I hated my legs, I would punish myself then in the gym. So I went from being actually in quite a healthy relationship, like I said, eating whole foods, not really thinking about my body. I was just in shape, and that was it,
Yeah.
really. Two, I got to punish myself in the gym, so driven by self hate,
Yeah.
and then overeating every weekend and self loathing and feeling guilty
Yeah.
afterwards. You know what I mean?
It's a
So
horrible cycle.
100%, man. And I thought one more thing I wanted to say. I thought I got away from the body image stuff. I don't realize, bro, that I'm actually doing it.
Yeah.
So, like, I still check my abs. I'm sure you do this. Yeah, Scott, you check your abs in the mirror?
Yeah, sure. Of course.
Of course, of course. Mate, it used to be in my heyday. Honestly, in my peak of competing, it would probably be about, this is no exaggeration, probably about 50 times a day. I would check my abs,
Oh,
get
wow.
up a morning, go for a pee, check my abs in the mirror. Now, because I did it so often, now I don't realize. I lift up and I look at the bottom part. I probably do it a few times a day. Didn't even know I was doing it until I
Wow.
went to Brazil to meet my girlfriend's family. And she was like, "You do realize you're like checking your abs in front of my family, don't you?" I'm like, "No, honestly, no." Didn't even know. I would just lift my top up a little bit and have a little look. It's just a habit, it's subconscious, you know. So I wanted to talk about that, man, because I think a lot of men don't talk about that enough, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's very common. I think, of course, women do it as well. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah, of course.
unfortunate because it's almost never positive. It's not like people are looking at themselves in the mirror all day and being, wow, you look great. Good job. Keep it up. It's always,
100%. And it's the bodybuilder identity, right? We can't help that as humans. I'm sure you've naturally done that now over the
yeah,
years, right? From you end up identifying, even if it is subconscious, as a bodybuilder or as the guy who's shredded on stage.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? It's hard to avoid.
yeah. No, I thankfully don't really look at myself in the mirror very often at all. Even when I go for a shower, I'll walk past the bathroom mirror and I don't really look. The main time I check my physique is when I do my weekly check-in photos for my coach.
Mm.
I'll take a glance at them before I send them to him, but I try not to dwell on it because I never like what I see.
Never like
Um,
what you see, no?
yeah. But no, it's definitely a challenge. I know a lot of friends who are in the bodybuilding space who are always looking at themselves, always critiquing themselves, always down on themselves. And part of it is kind of this self-loathing to try to fish for compliments. Like if
Mhm.
you are publicly or in, a small community or forum saying like, "Oh, here I am, I'm so fat," or look at these chicken legs or something like that. You, I think part of the reason people do that is because they're hoping someone will say, "Oh no, you look great," like,
Exactly.
are you
External validation.
correct them? But yeah, it's either way, whether you're joking or you're serious, it's not great for your mental health whatsoever.
100%, man. But yeah, I've got to a place now where even though I subconsciously check my abs and openly I'll look, right? And I think there could be a small amount of value to that, so you don't catch yourself slipping. I guess maybe 10% of it,
Yeah.
but most of it, I don't think it's something you fully overcome. You know what I mean? But
Mm.
I'm driven purely, like, mainly by health. That's what that, and you're probably the same, right? I always say to people, it's mental and emotional health. That's what I
Mm.
get excited about to go to the gym in the morning. Is how I
Yeah.
feel. I feel great, and even when you get a pump, and just how you feel mentally, productivity, your mood's better, your energy levels, and all those kind of things. But I'd be completely bullshitting you if I said I wasn't still really, really aesthetics are extremely important to me, man. I live in Bondi. When I go to the beach, I
Yeah.
like to be a guy in the best shape on the beach. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
You know what
Good for you.
I'm
No, I have no doubt you will be well into your 40s, 50s, and 60s
saying?
too. That's awesome. Yeah, but no, we don't have to get into me too much, but I went through a very interesting journey with body image, where I like hated my body for a long time, especially, and then during rowing, it was like how you look doesn't matter because ironically, some of the best athletes I rode with looked like they had like guts. It was so counterintuitive because despite what people think about it as an endurance sport, people think, oh, rowing, what you put in is what you get out. And, you just have to be in really good shape and you have to work hard and you'll get the results. But it's hugely genetic. Like the length of your legs is really important, all these things. And so, I rode with guys who were basically out of shape and they would crush everyone. They were like, elite level top 10 in the country. And yeah, so for a while, I didn't care what I looked like at all when I was rowing. And then post rowing, I kind of lost my purpose. focusing on rowing and having that narrow focus, and then started developing a lot of these body image issues myself.
Interesting, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd love to hear like how did you start to work through binge eating? What got you to start breaking that cycle, or what do you think? Um, was there like a triggering moment for you, or was it just something that you gradually overcame?
Mm. Great question. I already want to shout out because I started listening to podcasts back in 2015. I just started listening to podcasts, man.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's mainly what it was. It was kind of it's interesting because I knew all the stuff. I knew most of the stuff, but because people weren't coming out and talking about, for example, I was still conditioned like a bodybuilder, right? If I don't eat 6 times a day, muscle's going to fall off my body.
Mm,
Deep down, didn't really make that much sense,
yeah.
but I'm going to play it safe. You know what I mean? And then I started listening to podcast and, fasting, God forbid, fasting, you know what I mean? Muscle's going to fall off my body, man. I'm going to wither away. I'm
Yeah.
going to end up like that skinny teenager I used to be, don't want to be doing that. So I started educating myself, listening to it. I'm going to shout them out. Mind Pump, right? They're the number one health and fitness
Yep.
podcast in the world. Now, you heard of those guys?
Yeah. Sal. Forget his.
Sal, Adam, obviously, who's competed before as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Justin, you shout them all out, man. They're absolute legends in the game. And they were just saying it how it was. But I remember the first, and this is nothing against CrossFitters, right? It's nothing personal. I don't think there's going to be many CrossFitters listening to this, actually. It's ad. Don't take it personal, but no,
They
that the
better
first
not.
podcast.
No, just kidding.
Exactly. The first one I listened to with Mind Pump, they were taking the piss out of CrossFit, man. It was funny, and I thought, oh wow, these guys are funny. And then I just started going, okay, yeah, I knew that. Why am I not doing that? And long story short, then I just started naturally adding in more whole foods. And this is something I really want to hammer home because this is how I coach my clients as well. I've coached so many people, but it was only really, if I'm honest, when I started really educating myself and going through my own journey of having to overcome, binge eating or emotional eating, it was kind of a mixture of the two, that
Yeah.
I actually realized, you know what, actually restricting and taking away, trying to have the mindset of, okay, I'm not going to eat Domino's now. Lie to yourself, right? Eat Domino's and Ben and Jerry's, overeat on a weekend, get to a Monday and go, I'm not doing that again. That's it. I'm done with it. I'm going to cut it out. It's not that simple. Doesn't work like that. You're never going to succeed that way for the most part. What I found, and I didn't know what I was doing at the time, I was just adding in. I was like, look, I'm getting gut issues. So that was kind of like a turning point for me, is where I was getting really bad inflammation from just eating garbage on the weekends and then just, falling asleep an hour or trying to go to sleep an hour after eating like 4,000 calories of like Domino's and stuff probably didn't help. And I was getting, man, the pain I was getting. I remember waking up one morning, it was like the third time I had this excruciating gut pain, which went on for like a day or two. I was like, man, I got to do something about this now. It was kind of like, almost like an effort moment, where you
Yeah.
just say, F,
Yeah.
you got to do something about it. So yeah, just started adding in more whole foods, just started eating more kind of meat, vegetables, those kind of things. I actually started implementing fasting. When I would overdo it, I would go, okay, I'm just going to fast in the morning now and see how I feel. Noticed actually I feel a bit better. My gut's actually improving when I'm giving myself a break from food. And then I just started noticing my energy levels were better and stuff like that. I was feeling more satiated. And just over time, it was a process, though. This doesn't happen overnight, Scott, right? It was a process of just having less desire
Yeah.
to eat processed foods. But that was a process of adding in, eating more protein, implementing some fasting, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend to most people. But that was just to heal my gut.
Mhm.
Even eating more vegetables at the time, which seemed to be okay on my gut, but now they don't seem to agree with me. And yeah, that was kind of how I overcame it. And that was kind of it, really, in a nutshell. And then moved to Australia. Just as I was coming out of it, I moved to Australia and continued to kind of improve from there. Then, and it's kind of good here because the lifestyle, and especially in Bondi, you're in the, I don't know, like the 1 to 5% of people who are really in shape as well and actually healthy with it as well for the most part.
Yeah.
Walking around like loads of, like, it's weird. You go and train at the gym and it's like most guys are in insane shape, and you
Wow.
realize this is not real life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of inspiring. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That's good.
That helps.
Yeah. Environment makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Definitely, man.
I really love that approach you talked about, especially with your clients, of empowerment. I think that's so, rather than restriction, I think that's so powerful and really can make such a huge difference for people. I see so many people struggling, and even the words we use around diet, like I can't eat this, I can't eat that. I'm doing this diet, which means no, this, and this,
100%.
whereas, shifting the focus to what am I going to do to make myself feel better? What can I do to satiate myself? Focusing on the positive is so important.
100%. That's exactly what you hit the nail on the head. It's empowering, right?
Yeah.
When I set my clients targets, for example, it could be something simple like a protein target, right? So they may have struggled with, fat loss, for example, for a number of years. And then you're like, first thing we're going to do is we're going to hit this protein target, right? And
Yeah.
they're like, oh, that's different. They start hitting the target, they start getting those small wins. And
Yeah.
then you know what? That within itself, right?
Yeah.
You start hitting, let's just average it off to a gram per pound of body weight. You start doing that every single day. You start noticing I'm not as hungry. And then naturally you start replacing sugar, for example,
Yeah.
or more processed foods with more protein, right? And it's like a subtle way. It's a subtle
Yeah.
way of doing it. It's like you see the transformation in behaviors, then, which is number one, right?
Yeah. And it works so much better than like an overhaul, which is what most people try, which
100%.
never works. Try like implementing habits, slowly stacking them. I really like that idea.
Mm. Basically turning behaviors into habits, right? That's what it's all about.
Yeah, yeah. And what talk about like your shift from aesthetics to health and how that happened for you mentally? Like where did like obviously you said you still care about how you look now, but you're much more focused on mental health, physical health. What changed your perspective there? Was it like quitting competing? What got you to take more of that view?
Yeah. So the first thing was it was a mindset shift in let's focus on performance in the gym. That was number one for me. Rather than constantly training because I want to bring up my medial deltoids, for example, right? Trying to bring up all these lagging body parts and being obsessed, like I said, with aesthetics. I was okay, I'm gonna focus on hitting some PBs.
Yeah,
And I remember I set some targets with squats, again, empowerment, right? Set a target with my squat and deadlift, hit my all-time PBs. And I was like, wow, I like this. And then what I noticed, this is really interesting because I hadn't, well, it's not actually rocket science. It makes sense because I hadn't done low rep range, heavy lifting type training before. Really,
yeah,
obviously, novelty, right? The body was
yeah,
like, okay, and the body thrives off novelty. Boom. I built muscle. I saw my body respond better than I had in ages. And I thought, wow, that's a good byproduct.
yeah.
And that's the words I want to hammer home here. The aesthetics then started slowly becoming a byproduct
Mm.
of health and strength and those kind of things. So that was number one. Number two then was, obviously I'd stopped competing as well, which kind of helped, right? 2016, I did the World Championships in Toronto, and I got in the top 10 out of 40, which I was really happy with. As a WBFF is obviously a non-tested federation, so I would guess at least 70 to 80% of the fitness guys. Forget about muscle models, right? They're all on gear, right? And I can't fault them. You ain't gonna get nowhere in that category without. But the fitness models, actually, the guy who won it was natural, right? He's a freak of nature, absolute mutant. Williams Fallade, his name was. But long story short, got in the top 10 there as a natural against, and an untested federation, which I was happy with. But after that, then I think I took a break for like 3 years from competing. And, 6 months after that show or a year or so after I moved to Australia. And yeah, it was that shift of just not being obsessed, not competing, really noticing my body responding by changing up my training programming. And that's another thing that Mind Pump brought me onto was switching to train the full body,
Mm.
which blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind. That actually training the full body, say for example, 3 times per week, rather than doing, a bro split type program, actually got me better results. Obviously, on the days in between, I was still training. So I would do like pump up with bands, or I would do maybe work on some lagging body parts. So obviously, I still wanted to look good, but I wasn't obsessed. And I noticed, wow, man, my body's feeling better. Number one, because it's not as much volume per session. And number two, my body's responding as a byproduct. So
Yeah,
when I got to that point and I was like, wow, I like the way I feel. Fasting, I was doing regular at that point as well. Just when I say fasting, just skipping breakfast, eating 2 or 3 meals a day, noticing, wow, I'm more productive when I'm in the morning having black coffee and getting work done. So again, it goes back to really paying attention is number one. Like you don't know what you don't know.
yeah,
If you're not aware and you don't pay attention to those really fundamental things like getting good quality sleep, gut health, um, you getting stronger, right? This is something that's kind of overlooked. Am I actually getting noticeably stronger in the gym? Am I really adding volume? And if you're noticing a plateau with that, that's probably not a good sign. So those kind of things, which really got me to that next level.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. I think another cool thing is I think health can be a byproduct too. If you find something you really enjoy about the gym. And I think the people who get the best results find it may not start out this way. A lot of people hate going to the gym. But eventually the people I think who succeed, whether it be in health or aesthetics, are people who fall in love with the process and the journey. And then either aesthetics or health can be a byproduct, really. If you also fall in love with, eating healthy and
Yeah,
sleeping well and all these habits, stress relief. I like that idea of the outcome being a byproduct.
I love that, man. I think that's a really good point we should hammer home as well is self-discipline. People don't understand when you look at people like Scott or myself who are, we're in great shape all year round, you know, self-discipline is actually enjoyable at that point,
Yeah,
right? Those acts of eating good quality foods for the
yeah,
most part. Obviously, you're going to eat some other foods here and there. That's totally fine, as long as, in my opinion, 90% of the time you're eating mainly whole foods. And going to the gym, for example, like I said earlier, when you realize how good you feel, it's almost like brushing your teeth, right? It's like I'm not going to get up and not brush my teeth. I
yeah,
can't just get up and not go to the gym because I'm not going to perform, feel, and all those kind of things. So it becomes enjoyable. So it's not willpower. People get mistaken with that. Oh
yeah,
my God, he's so strict. How many times do people say that to you?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
say it. Don't look at it that way, do you?
No, no, not once. Yeah.
Unless you're competing, that's different.
Yeah.
That's a different.
And even then, it's just like, as you're in it, it's so motivating to just like tick the boxes. And maybe I'm wired different, but I think to an extent, everyone can get into that mode where they just enjoy the process, like I said,
Mm,
and get motivation from that. Um,
definitely.
and one thing I wanted to ask you about, Martin, is you work with a lot of I'm sure you work with all different types of people, athletes and stuff, but I'm curious when you work with people with like really busy careers, people who travel for work or people who are working 9 to 5 or more. What are some of the biggest challenges you find with them? And how do you help them overcome that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So now I do actually work with mainly, high achieving people. So basically, high performing professionals and a lot of business owners and stuff. So that's the kind of person I actually do work with nowadays. I don't work with athletes anymore.
Okay.
Maybe some ex-athletes and stuff like that. So the biggest challenges I see is essentially people firstly having that structure. So when they travel a lot, having, again, it goes back to setting targets, right? So having like non-negotiable targets. Now, sometimes, for example, they might get caught up with work. They might travel to somewhere. Think of one client now. Shout out to Brian. He travels all over America with work. And when he goes, he basically will get thrown off at times, right? He'll have meetings, he'll get caught up. But a simple thing, which I think is overlooked, is just training first thing.
Mm,
So it comes again. You can't teach discipline, right? It's not something you can really teach.
yeah.
You can give people all the resource in the world, right? How to manage time, and people love all that, right? Spreadsheets, but without the discipline, you can kind of forget about it. So my
Yeah.
client Brian, for example, he'll look in advance, right? And he never makes excuses. He'll get up early and train, so it leaves nothing to chance. That's number one. What I see is when people let the day get away from them, especially when they're busy people and they've got a business to run and kids and everything else, it leaves it to chance too much.
Yeah.
And then you see skip workouts and stuff. Whereas I know myself, like this morning, first thing I do, decision I make is go to the gym. So
Yeah.
it's not hanging over my head all day. I haven't got to like plan my food around it. Just get up and go to the gym. So my client Brian, for example, he'll get up at 4 if he needs to, or whatever, or 5, and just go to the gym in the morning, get out of the way, and he'll go to bed earlier, right? And that's the big one. It's the bedtime routine
Mm,
people slip up with and they overlook it, and they're on their phone and they think they're being productive by working right up until they go to bed.
yeah.
But the reality is I see the ripple effect that happens,
Yeah.
and you end up not getting as good results because you're not as consistent. So I'd say the bedtime routine, getting up early, training first thing, sets everything up. When they don't do that, I feel like it leaves it to chance a bit more. Now there's that, like, I have clients who don't go in the morning and they're consistent. But when I look over long periods of time, and you've probably seen these patterns, right? People who train first thing, they tend to be more consistent all year
Yeah.
round.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I was at my absolute unhealthiest, this is why I'm so curious. And I wish I had known someone like you. When I was at my unhealthiest was when I was starting my career, first 4 years probably. I worked in management consulting, which was like 90-hour work weeks, traveling every week. You'd basically wake up and go into the office, and then, you'd be in a windowless conference room until it was time for dinner. You'd order food the whole time, and then they'd want to go out to a team dinner. And it was just like you never knew when your day would end. It's this feeling of helplessness. And that was definitely when I was my unhealthiest and unhappiest. Definitely had some mental health challenges then. So yeah, I
No
really
doubt.
wish I had known someone like you back then. But
Exactly. But another thing, then again, it is that preparation. I think that pre-planning is a biggest challenge I see for people. The old thing, fail to prepare or whatever it is, and
yeah,
prepare to fail. That is true, right? It's like I'm going to use Brian as an example. He's a great example. So he'll actually look in advance. Let's say he's going like this week. He went from New York to LA. He'll look in advance, and Amazon do like a food delivery thing in a lot of these places.
smart.
What he'll actually do, he'll actually get food ordered to the hotel, right? So he'll
Yeah,
go, and people. The funny thing is, people look at people like that and they go, "Oh man, he's so obsessed." Like
yeah,
the average person. Nah, he's not actually. He's just on the ball and he's aware of what he needs to do
yeah,
to stay on top of it. So he'll order food from Amazon, like, you can get boiled eggs, salads, meat, that kind of stuff. And he'll get it ordered to the hotel for the time he gets there.
yeah,
He can't always do that. But these are just examples of what it takes. And he is a bit obsessed, right? Because we always joke about him in the community and laugh about him because he takes his like food weighing scales and that when he goes away. He likes to weigh his food as well. I think that's good. You know what I mean? But yeah, so that's the biggest challenges. And then also another one I'd say is it's a simple one, right? But it's like regular movement throughout the day.
mm,
What you find is when people are kind of chained to their desk, especially people who work really, really hard,
yeah,
you just notice the productivity is not as good, mental health's not as good, and people overlook, and especially people who are super busy, right? Back to back meetings and stuff. I get it, but it doesn't have to be like I have to do a 30-minute walk or 45-minute walk. If you can do that in the morning, fantastic. Just regular movement. So even when you're taking calls and stuff, move, move, move. I'll,
yeah,
I'll do it all the time. I'll even if
yeah,
I'm like checking emails, think, okay, I need to get my steps up. I'll just pace up and down and just check my emails.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? I think that's something that's overlooked, that regular movement.
yeah, absolutely. Or even
Yeah,
a thing I do is like if you're having a call with someone or a meeting, just say, hey, do you want to take this walking? Do you want to go for a
definitely.
walk while
I
we
do.
talk? Obviously
100%.
that's not always practical depending on what you're working on, but a lot of times it is. And, no one has ever said to me, what? That's completely inappropriate. They'd say, oh yeah, great, let's get out.
Absolutely.
Or
That's
welcome.
exactly what I recommend, actually. Yeah.
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 Um, Another thing I was curious about, because you've worked with so many people, do you find often people, um, especially people who are like further along in their life, maybe a very successful professional, and then are trying to get into fitness, trying to focus more on their health. Do you think sometimes they're self-sabotaging, like almost subconsciously holding themselves back, um, and stopping themselves from getting the results they really want?
Yeah, 100%. And most people I work with, they're normally already kind of in motion with their training and stuff,
Mm,
but they struggle with the other stuff, the nutrition and the lifestyle
mm,
stuff. So absolutely, people, generally I coach people up to about the age of 55, generally. So when I get people come through, say 40s, 50s, yes, because then it's harder in a way psychologically because they have to unlearn a lot more then as well. So I find that can be a barrier as well, when it comes to even certain outlooks on nutrition and certain belief they might have. But yeah, self sabotage just in general as well. Self sabotage is real, and I always say people have different kind of self sabotage superpowers, right? Where it might be, for example, emotional eating, right? Most of us do that or have struggled with it. And people they will sabotage because, for example, they have been used. They get a big one I see, men and women, and you've seen this, right? Is getting attached so much to that number on the scale
mm,
and it's a constant education process, and it's a case of just banning certain clients from using them and just focusing on other metrics, right? Because that holds them back. And then, for example, they might have 2 weeks, and God forbid, let's say they're in a fat loss phase. I've seen some clients go 3 weeks without their 2, 3 weeks without their weight even changing, but they're still getting leaner. You know what I mean? And then it'll catch up, right? Because it's never linear fat loss. But
mhm.
to actually, especially someone who's older, this is a good point. Someone who's older, they're so conditioned by that number on the scales because they
Yeah,
just weighed themselves for longer, right? And how society was back then in the 80s and 90s was all about being like skinny and stuff, right? Especially for females. And that really holds them back. And then they might, get disheartened and then turn to food, for example, then, right?
yeah,
It's not working. You know what I mean? So that's a big sabotage kind of trigger for a lot of people as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I also see a thing which is like it's almost like there's something in the back of their mind telling them they don't deserve the
Mm,
results they're getting. And so, like you give your example of Brian who wakes up at 4 or 5 to go work out in the morning. They're almost like Well, I could never do, like, I'm never going to be the person who does that. Because it's actually a confidence issue. They don't think they're good enough to be the type of person who does that.
Mm.
That's something I see a lot too.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. And it is a bit above and beyond for most as well. And if I could help it, I wouldn't do it. But I just think that if I was in that situation, right, where I didn't have a choice but to go first thing, you're just gonna
Yeah.
make it happen, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's one of them ones. No, but that's a big one. I want to touch on that beliefs, and also there's so much stuff going on, right? People have childhood trauma, all these kind of
Yeah.
things, which give them limiting beliefs essentially,
Exactly.
right? So definitely. So they get to a point where they're like, they might be getting results, but they've got low self-esteem, right? Which needs to be built up over time. And the only way you build that up is also by working on yourself as well, right? You have to be really aware of what's going on psychologically in terms of your thought process and why you might get triggered by certain things and why you don't feel like you deserve certain results. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think people having that self-awareness, and that's why I feel like things like journaling and stuff, like
Mhm.
just dumping your thoughts down on paper, your thoughts, your fears, your feelings can be really, really helpful for a lot of people as well,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you've worked with tons and tons of people because you're very educated on this stuff. And I'm sure you have tons of tricks and strategies to help people with it as well.
Yeah, 100%, man. Always learning. That's the interesting thing, man. Psychology and the human brain is so complex.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how much, and when it still blows my mind with nutrition, like how much variance there is from person to person
Mm.
is
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. Well, Martin, where can people find you? I'll have links to everything in the show notes, but this has been an absolute pleasure. I want you to get a chance to plug anything and tell us where folks can follow you and get in touch with you if they'd like to.
Awesome, man. Yeah, hey, I really enjoy catching up, man, and always really enjoy our conversations, man. When you feel like you could just keep going and going and going, you got like this
Yeah.
engine. So appreciate it, bro. Always enjoy it. So yeah, where they can find me is what you said at the start. So Martin at Martin Silva Fitness
Yep.
is my Instagram handle. That's where I'm kind of most active, I guess, when it comes to social media. And also my podcast. Definitely go check that out. It's called Optimize Your Body, but it's optimize spelled SE on the end. So it's not spelled the American way. You
Yep.
can find that on all platforms. But yeah, my YouTube is where I post I do it on Spotify and stuff as well, but I post it all on my YouTube. My YouTube channel is Martin Silva Fitness though still, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, you can plug down the thing, type in Martin
Links
Silva
all that.
Fitness or Optimize Your Body. Awesome, man. And that's the main things. And also, yeah, I'll give you my website or whatever as well. People get like a free metabolic. I do like this metabolic assessment. So if they
Cool.
if they go to my website, optimizeyourbody.com, they'll get like a free metabolic assessment where it kind of assesses where their metabolism is at and tells them the best path to take to get kind of the best results, really. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Martin. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Appreciate it, bro. Thank you, man.